As you can see, I didn't introduce Reg on the show.
Innovation is in our veins. Soon the whole world will know our names. Sharing our knowledge and freedom reign. We here for the people, you know it's our way. Setting foundations is part of the dream. It doesn't matter if you're new to the game. Listen up now, cause we all gon' say, elevate, 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 higher, elevate, 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 higher. We gon' rise up, we all gon' shine. Work through adversity, stay on the grind. Elevate, elevate, this is our time. Elevate, elevate.
Welcome to the Elevate Podcast, everyone. It's so great to have you all on one more time. It's your boy Josh, and I'm grateful to be back on with you yet again. I see you guys getting hot in the chat already, and we are ready for it. And appreciate the compliments. I'll take them when I can get them. You know, it's tough these days when you're getting old, you know, and getting older. It's nice when people look at your good looks and compliment you. Appreciate it, Krabby Witch. Really appreciate it. We have so much to get into tonight. First off, well, Middle Eastern conflict. You know, you keep hearing about it. It keeps getting worse, and it keeps coming back here. And we'll be talking about all the different issues that are happening with what the police services in this country are doing, how they're addressing it, the conversations they're having with the media about these things, and is our police really up for the task to get ready for what's coming? We'll be talking about that today. Secondly, you know, we keep having these non-confidence motions and these votes that are continuing to be defeated in the House. And it feels like at times like it's going nowhere. But if you look between the lines, there is something happening. And we're going to be talking about that later as well. And last but not least, parliamentary business being suspended. The Speaker of the House stepping up and doing his job and forcing the Liberals to have some accountability with the janky stuff they're doing these days. We love to see it. So much going on, so much to touch on today. We are looking forward to all of it. Before we do, we are going to touch on newsletter this week. We're excited. First off, if you missed it, we got a newsletter happening. We got a newsletter going on, and it releases every Friday. So if you are so inclined, just scroll on down to our website, put your name and your email there, and we'll make sure we have the stories we couldn't get to during the week going right to your inbox on Friday. We'd like to have you. It's been going well. We are a very strong email list already. Y'all have been really signing up real quick. And as for someone who, like myself, who has actually never done a newsletter before, it's all new to me, but I'm glad that people are getting value out of it and it's going well. We are really grateful. And we are excited to be here with you. So first off, first story, there's no in the news segment today. We are jumping right into it. It's concerning, mainly here in Halifax, Nova Scotia. This is what's going on. So this was posted by Halifax Noise on behalf of a Free Palestine group here in the city. And this is what they posted on their Instagram. And this is what they had planned. This is what they had to say. Due to the increasing number of threats we've received, we made the difficult decision to cancel our rally scheduled for October 7th. October 7th, just keep that date in mind. The safety of our attendees is our top priority. We've faced ongoing harassment, both verbal and physical, and the intensity of these threats has escalated recently. Slide 2. However, we are committed to our cause and will be holding another rally in the coming days. Stay tuned for details, and thank you for your understanding and support. Stay safe and stand strong. Free. Free Palestine. Free Palestine. Free Palestine. Free Palestine. That's what they were wanting to do on October 7th here in Halifax, Nova Scotia. And they post this tear-jerking post about, oh man, we can't gather on October 7th to let people know that we're glad that October 7th happened, that many people were murdered brutally. And I don't know, we won't use the R word here because we're live on YouTube and it might get thrown out, but that all happened as well. Terrible things happened October 7th. And these people are going to gather in the streets of Halifax and cheer on for Free Palestine and to wish the death of Israel and the whole West. And they're all living here wanting it all to happen. They're enjoying our freedoms, enjoying what we have, and using those freedoms to wish death upon us all. 2024 is wild, y'all. We got to admit. The one thing is those who can see the screenshot, we have Reg Manzer, our homie, getting in the comments on this one because this one really fired him up. He says, how did anyone think a rally on the day when innocent civilians were brutally R-word and slaughtered is okay? You can have your beliefs and opinions, but celebrating death is never okay. And Reg is right. This was not okay. This was, on some ways, when this came across my desk, I thought I was reading a joke. A really terrible joke, but then learned that, no, this is just kind of what people are doing these days. And to those who are, from the East and who live on this side of the country, yep, we are not, we're not exceptions to the rule of all the stuff and the chaos that's going on in the world these days. It's coming back home. People are cheering for it. And I will never, ever, ever stand with someone who is going to actively stand up there on October 7th and cheer on the group Hamas, who did some very terrible things to innocent civilians on October 7th in Israel. It's going to be a no from me, y'all. Sorry to say. So much of this nonsense going on, and it is the thing about this post I really find interesting is just it's the victimhood of it all. The safety of our attendees is our top priority. We are so offended and nervous about the threats we've received. You're surprised you're receiving threats on this one, eh? Well, either you are incredibly dumb or you are incredibly, what's the word I'm looking for? Naive isn't the word. It's definitely not the word. But you know what the word I'm thinking of is. It's greasy. It just shows that they are just trying to win over and use people's empathies and sympathies against them. And that's all this is. That's what the left does. They use whatever the thing is of the day. Whatever the event is of the day, they'll use it to be able to get and maintain power. That's how these things work. And it was interesting because the same things, also, we've been seeing it just ravage the city of Toronto. These types of events and these types of protests taking place in the city of Toronto. And the chief of police of Toronto was grilled by Brian Lilley, who is a columnist for The Sun. And this is kind of how this conversation went. We'll only watch the first 2 minutes, but Brian really brings it to him here.
Will not hesitate to enforce the law and make arrests where warranted.
Chief, your leadership of TPS and TPS has faced a lot of criticism over how the protests have been handled over the last year. I think to the officers handing coffee and donuts over to the protesters on the Avenue Road Bridge, the shutdown of the Prime Minister's dinner with the Italian Prime Minister. So, given the track record, why should people feel confident that things will be better as the protesters are clearly saying they're coming up for a big celebration of the one-year anniversary of the attack?
I appreciate your perspective, Brian, but I will tell you that, we've repeatedly talked about the entire context of what we're dealing with. And I think it's important to reflect on the fact that our members have risen to the challenge our city has faced day in and day out to over 1,500 events. And while I appreciate your perspective, I think we need to take it in context of the entire set of circumstances we're facing. And we have very much engaged with our communities and been present in our communities on the ground where communities meet and gather, as well as demonstrations and gatherings to ensure the safety of those events. And I believe that our members have done an incredible job keeping our city safe during what has been a very challenging time for our communities.
The challenge, but if you could expand on the context, and you mentioned arrests and you mentioned flags. Over the past couple of weeks, we've started seeing Hezbollah flags on the streets of Toronto. And what I hear from the Jewish community is, why is that allowed? Why aren't people arrested immediately? So if you could address those two things. What is the context that you're saying you are doing a good job? And could you talk about why people aren't arrested quickly with the flags? Because they feel intimidated and quite frankly scared by people.
I'll start an answer, Brian, and then turn it over to the superintendent responsible for our intelligence unit in our hate crime unit. I very much wanted to stress and reassure the community that we continue to investigate every reported incident. And I specifically spoke to flags for that reason, because we understand the concerns in our communities. And, I share a concern around the presence of materials that promote terrorist entities as identified by Public Safety Canada. And we gather the evidence and act as quickly as we can based on the evidence that is before us. And perhaps the superintendent can add a little more context as required.
So that's that. That is what's going on and what's happening. The chief of police in Toronto trying his best to be as political as he can, trying to make sure he doesn't get himself in hot water. But there's literally groups of people in the city of Toronto right now in Jewish neighborhoods waving Hezbollah flags. Terrorist organization flags being waved around in Toronto right now. And we've been seeing this various amounts of situations like this taking place over the past year, since October 7th, essentially. And very little is being done to take care of it because of the worry of appearing like you're supporting one side or the other. And I remember myself and Reg were talking about this because this came up during Trudeau's interview with Colbert, where he talked about the difference between America and Canada. America is a melting pot. You come to America and you drop everything and you become American. Whereas Canada typically has been viewed as more of what they call a mosaic. It's like you bring your culture with you. We just kind of share the same plot of land. And that's really all that kind of binds us together. We have some values as Canadians, but overall, you bring whatever's with you, and we just bring our differences come together in one little mosaic, and come together as one piece, essentially. And one has to wonder, at this point, we've gotten to the point where we are too tolerant as a society, that we are just allowing this to happen in our streets, violence to take place, and people utter violence in our streets. And obviously the one thing that kind of made me uncomfortable with this scenario in this interview was like, well, we have to go to our hate crime unit. And I'm like, yeah, that's a different conversation for another day. But why do we have a hate crime unit? Like, why is that a thing? Can't we just have, the crime unit take care of it? People are literally uttering threats of violence in the streets of Toronto, but yeah, we'll go to our hate crime unit on it. Okay, got it. Makes sense to me. People are in the streets saying they want to burn Canada and the US and Israel to the ground. But we'll get our hate crime unit on it. Yeah, that'll do something. That'll show them. We are too soft. We are too tolerant. Comes a point where you need to set up a line and got to say, no more. This is not going to be tolerated here. But we keep allowing it. And by we, I mean our leaders, those in political positions, allow it to happen. There are very few in politics that are speaking out against it. And it happens to be people who are Jewish who are speaking out against it, or those who fled Iran as well, who are speaking out against it. But they're getting murdered by some of their colleagues for doing so. What is happening? When are we just going to say, no, that's not going to be appropriate? I was having a conversation with a friend the other day who was trying to somewhat humanize Hezbollah. Well, you gotta think about where they're coming from and kind of what happened. I'm like, okay, we can go through the history of how they got here. Sure. We can do that with Hitler too, if we want. I hate to use that overused trope, but there's points where that seems like the only thing that people understand. We can use that. Would you think that's okay? We get to a point where we're trying too hard to empathize with those whose values don't align with ours. Like, it's pretty simple. Decisions need to be made of what you do with this. And do you tolerate it or do you not? Will you tolerate anti-Semitism or will you not? So many people are being like, well, man, if I lived in the 40s, I would have stood up to the Nazis. Yet here we are. And you are allowing them to walk all over people. The same people you said you would defend, they're walking all over. Well, Israel's now a nation now that can defend itself, so they're the oppressor now. So they need to be taken out. When you start hearing awful, heinous things being uttered by people towards Israel, towards Jewish people, you wonder why. Like, gee, we didn't even make it 100 years, and we're already back here, just looking at a different form of it. It is interesting. It is crazy. And as I said, I'm seeing here a Skeptical 59, violence should never be tolerated by anyone. And you're spot on. I couldn't agree more. And it is such a divisive topic these days. It's divisive in the Ontario legislature. And it's also getting to be a divisive topic in the Liberal Party of Canada. Take a look at this. I thought this was interesting. Melissa Lanceman posted this earlier today.
That Israel should not respond to Iran. You've called for a ceasefire vis-a-vis Hezbollah, but this attack from Iran, is Canada asking Israel not to respond in kind?
We need to make sure that there's no escalation.
I pray for a world where Israel can defend itself from Iranian and Hezbollah missiles without being condemned, and one where it can live securely in peace with its neighbors.
Canada's position that Israel should...
So obviously we sliced up a bit. Melanie Jolie, we didn't get that full answer there. But essentially she went to go and describe, that it just needs to stop escalating. And she went and expanded on that in a couple paragraphs. But the whole point is the fact that you have Melanie Jolie, who's a minister in the Liberal Party here, in cabinet. And then there's another member of that party who's like, no, Israel should be able to defend itself. They're breaking rank. Anthony Housefaller. He is obviously Jewish, so that, that comes down to at least in this case, this would fall under the definition of, MPs voting their conscience. But it's still interesting that you have majority Liberal Partyers like, we know that a lot of our base is our Palestine supporters. So we can't totally say Israel should defend itself, but, I don't know. Look at what these groups are doing to their own people. And that'll tell you everything you need to know. There's no, at this point where there is no, well, this side versus that. It's like it's good and bad at this point from my perspective, from what I understand. And a decision needs to be made. What's going to happen? Canada, are you going to get fully behind Israel on this? Or are you going to try on both sides and do what America does, supply weapons to both sides, and then you just, take care of the solution so you can maintain the power? Don't know. It's a great question. The thing about it, though, is this is an article that came out earlier last week. Thinking the unthinkable. NATO wants Canada and allies to gear up for conventional war. NATO calling Canada out. Get ready, Canada. I know you haven't invested anything into your military structures, but get ready for war. NATO says it wants its members to develop national plans to bolster the capacity of their individual defense industry sectors, a concept Canada struggled with or avoided outright for decades. At the NATO Leaders Summit in Washington in July, alliance members agreed to come up with strategies to boost their domestic defense material sectors and to share these strategies with each other. Almost entirely overshadowed at the time by the debates about members' defense spending and support for Ukraine, the new policy got little attention. Federal officials are just beginning to wrap their heads around the ramifications of the new policy and the burden it could place on the government of Canada's defense sector. And CBC News has learned that Ottawa has little in the way of institutional knowledge or Cold War-era mechanisms on which to fall back. For decades, the federal government has lacked an across-the-board plan to fully mobilize the country, federal institutions, and the economy to fight a conventional war, the kind that Ukraine is fighting now. I know there's many on the friends of the show, many of you listen, who have friends and connections in the military. And they've been warning us about all this for decades, for a long time. Our military is just not there. And then the joke's always, well, at least we got America to the south of us. I've never been a fan of that, personally. Just relying on somebody else to get by. And we've gone away with it for a long time, but it's one thing to have America at the south of you. It's other to just completely neglect your defense spending altogether. Just completely neglect it. Just hoping America will take the tab. Then they vote in someone like Trump, and he's like, no more free rides. Get your crap together, Trudeau. No more free rides. And then you're toast. And now this is why people wonder, I've, friends in the States who give me a hard time. Why do you care so much about the American election? It's because of crap like this. Crap decisions that your stupid politicians are making are dragging my kids into war. So yeah, I do have a bit of an issue of who you vote for and who you don't. And that's what they always ask, Josh, well, how could you support Trump? All my lefty friends, how could you support Trump? And all I say in 3 words, no new wars. Simple as that. But here we go, being dragged into more conflict. Speaking of conflict, more of conflict's breaking up in the House, I have to admit. Blanchette is losing patience with Trudeau. Trudeau is a kind of an interesting scenario. We talked about this on Tuesday. With finding out the NDP is broke and they can't afford an election, and the Bloc has pretty much lost any type of bargaining chip they have after that news came out. NDP is going to vote with Liberals no matter what because they can't afford an election right now. And so Blanchette got up today and said, Trudeau hasn't met any of our demands. I'm going to make sure he meets them. That's what he had to say, though, in full.
Mr. Blanchette, why are you still willing to work with the Liberal government when they voted down this motion? Is that not sending a signal in some sort?
Okay, let's understand things as they are. The government, I will learn that word one day, did not have the spine to provide us and Canadians and Quebecers with a clear answer. So they just want to get some more time and to keep not deciding about anything. They might hope that they will go further than October 29th. They will not. So they have until a few days from now to go on with the royal recommendation. And if they do not, we will start as rapidly as next week to speak with other oppositions in order to get ready to go into an election. And I will tell you both in English and French that it is noticeable that the NDP voted in favor of this motion and that they could have eventually to assume the consequences of such a vote if we get to the next step without the government providing us and Canadians and Quebecers with what we want.
So you heard it right there, folks. He says Trudeau's waffling. He won't give us what we want. And it's because he knows you're not holding any cards. Singh has shown everything. And, it's like, oh, Singh's going to vote for me, so I don't really give a crap what you want. You're going to sit over in the corner, do nothing, and like it. That's what's going to happen. And that's kind of the conversation that Trudeau has given and the vibe he's given these guys. Blanche said, oh man, he's blustering, getting frustrated. Oh man, he's not giving us what we want, what we asked for, yada, 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 yada. We're going to start working with other parties to get ready for an election as early as next week. That's what he said. Threatening a vote non-confidence. Too bad if the NDPs keep voting for the Liberals, he's not going to do jack. He's not going to do jack. So here we are, more bluster and frustration. And honestly, after all the crap they've pulled the past month, I'm so happy they're not getting what they want. I'm so glad they're not getting what they want. They don't deserve it. The way they've been acting, oh, we only care about Quebec. I don't even know why you're at the table, quite frankly. But, he's being frustrated and annoyed. And you know who else is getting frustrated and annoyed? Trudeau. Trudeau getting frustrated and annoyed in the House of Commons today. Or yesterday.
On progressive politics from a party that ran away when the pressures got hot from the Conservative Party of Canada. The reality is, Mr. Speaker, we were able to work constructively as progressive parliamentarians to deliver big things for Canadians over the past few years, but the NDP choosing to turn its back on pricing pollution and putting more money in people's pockets, perhaps turning their back on pharmacare, which we will be debating over the coming months, is a real shame. Yes, it's tough to be a progressive in this time, but we will continue to stand strong for progressive values in this House.
Oh, yeah, let's go. Shut up, progressives. Let's go. Yeah, that's Trudeau getting people fired up in the House. We will always stand up for progressive values. It's hard right now to be a progressive. It's so hard because we robbed everybody blind. We're broke. We made everyone broke. So everyone hates us. That's why it's so hard to be progressive. No, you just gave progressives a bad name, quite frankly. But the fact he got up in the House and attacked the NDP, he doesn't care about people. He cares about the big bad conservatives and wants to side with them. He lit up Jagmeet in the middle of the House of Commons. Wasn't looking good. And it's really interesting seeing the fracture of this unofficial coalition that has taken place before our very eyes over the past several years. Blanchette screaming and crying in his corner. NDP Jagmeet saying, we ripped up and tore up the supply and confidence deal. And Trudeau getting in his feelings that, his feelings are hurt. There was an article from Global News yesterday where Trudeau said he was hurt. He was hurt that Jagmeet didn't call him before ripping up the supply and confidence deal. I know you're trying to play politics, brother, but get a hard helmet and get a life. I was hurt. Do you know what else hurts? Not being able to afford your groceries. Do you know what else hurts? 1.5 million people using food banks. Do you know what else hurts? People not being able to afford their homes and living in tents. Do you know what else hurts? World War III. Those things hurt. And so I see all this nonsense going on and happening, a lot of bluster and political theater. But it does beg the question, what is happening beneath the surface? Things are clearly cracking. They're clearly having a hard time. And they don't know what to do. The only one who is holding this whole situation up is the NDP. Our friend Jagmeet Singh. Ruining that party. God bless him. We'll see what ends up happening. You know, we keep having these confidence motions that are coming forward. Obviously, the last one was defeated just 2 days ago. And again, we'll see what happens. If Blanchet, I don't know what magic he's trying to pull. He might, who knows? Maybe the Bloc Québécois slides the NDP like $3 million. And it was like, hey, we'll spot you if you vote against the Liberals in the next non-confidence vote. Could you imagine? He'd probably pull something like that. Quebec has the money. Maybe. I mean, sorry, the Bloc has the money. Maybe. Who knows? Who knows? Big news came out, though, which I thought was interesting. The House will be seized. The House will be seized, says the House Speaker. Government business is on pause until documents make it back to the RCMP about this SDTC slush fund. This was like our comments were getting lit up for the past several weeks anytime we're talking about SDTC or any other type of corruption that's happening in this Liberal government. Like, how are we still doing House of Commons? How are we still doing parliamentary business? How is the government still operating with all of these investigations hanging over their head? And the question, is always answered with, unfortunately, this is how our system works. Someone's got to step up and do their job at some point, though. At some point. And it looked like the House Speaker finally did. Greg Fergus coming up, speaking up, stepping up. The government business has been put on indefinite pause in the House of Commons, and the Conservatives say it will stay that way until Liberals hand over documents related to misspent government dollars. Last week, Speaker Greg Fergus ruled that the government clearly did not fully comply with an order from the House to provide documents related to a new, now defunct foundation responsible for doling out hundreds of millions and millions of dollars, federal dollars, for green technology projects. Shadow green technology. The House has been seized by an indefinite debate on the issue ever since, and Conservative House Leader Andrew Scheer says it will continue until the government hands over the unredacted keyword documents. The government abolished SDTC after both the Auditor General and released a scathing report about the organization's management. Liberal House Leader Karina Gold, our favorite, says ordering the production of documents to be handed over to the RCMP blurs the lines between Parliament and police. In other words, she said, are you weaponizing our RCMP against your liberal or against your political opponents? That's what she's saying, in other words. And no, we are weaponizing the RCMP against criminals. Yeah, that's what we're doing here. The Liberals have had to postpone a vote on government tax reform twice while the debate drags on in the House. And quite frankly, I'm okay with it. I want this business of Parliament to be on pause for as long as possible. Let's drag this out. Get us into an election so they can't pass any more crazy bills that they keep trying to table. I'm here for it. Well, it's just, the government is, at this point, this government is the most effective when nothing is getting done. Speaking as a conservative at this point, when this government's doing nothing, that's when they're most effective, I find. So let's keep this going. Obviously, there's a bunch of other stuff happening behind the scenes. There's other things, other business that can transpire. It's kind of, in some ways, there's a little bit of this, that's a bit of theater. But still, it's a bit of a bump in the road for the Liberals. And we'll take the win as it comes. If we're not going to get an election before next October, then let's just hold business hostage until you give over the documents. Who will break first? Will Trudeau give over the documents, or are we going to get to an election first? we got all day. I'll be just here sipping my tea. See what happens, though. It'll be very interesting. It blurs the lines between police and Parliament. Karina Gold, man. She is something else. She is something else. But Michelle Rempel-Garner bring up more corruption in the House of Commons today. Bring up Mark Carney's conflict of interest. Obviously, we've been hearing murmurs about this of like Mark Carney, who's a liberal, who is a chair of a business, who has been actively trying to get government contracts, which is a government that Carney is having a role in to a degree. And we wanted to call it the conflict of interest that's happening there. And Michelle Rempel steps up in the House today to talk about it.
Liberals announced that Mark Carney, the chair of Brookfield, a $1 trillion corporation whose interests span the entire federal government, would be setting Canada's economic policy. Then news broke that Brookfield had been lobbying for a federally funded multi-billion-dollar investment fund that they would manage. Then, over this past weekend, Mark Carney sent out a fundraising email blast via the Liberal Party's donation list. Interesting. Did the Liberals or Brookfield clear any of this with the lobbying commissioner?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Again, Mr. Speaker, what we see from the Conservatives is when there are Canadians that don't share their vision of Canada, they talk them down. They try.
Invite the Honourable Minister to start again, but I'm going to ask members, please, again, do not take the floor until they're recognized by the chair. The Honourable Leader of the Government from the House of Commons from the top.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's okay. I understand this response makes them uncomfortable because they know it's true, Mr. Speaker. Right. But when it comes to Canadians who don't share their vision of Canada, what do Conservative members of Parliament do? They talk them down. They try to bring them down. They don't like having people push against their agenda. They don't like it when they're asked tough questions, or when smart, intelligent people don't share their vision of Canada, they try to take them down instead of having that debate. Thank you.
That's right. Good answer.
The Honourable Member from Calgary Nose Hill.
Grifols, a big pharma company, recently gained approval from Canadian Blood Services, which is regulated by the Liberal government, to acquire Canadian plasma resources, a critical source of blood products for Canadians. But this summer, reports said that under this contract, Canadian blood plasma products could be sold abroad for profit by Grifols, something that could jeopardize supply in Canada. Guess which company has been in takeover talks with Grifols this whole time? Brookfield. Is that why the Liberals didn't clear Carney with the lobbying commissioner?
Oh, yeah. Hit him hard. Hit him hard. Hit him often. And this is like, again, typical political volleying back and forth, right? Michelle Rempel-Garner comes up with a legitimate situation. What is going on with Mark Carney and the fact that he chairs a company that is trying to actively do business with the Liberal government? And why is he allowed to do that? And why is he allowed to be involved essentially on both sides of this? And Karina Gold stands up and makes it about how, the Conservatives just always talk down Canada. When people don't agree with them, they just talk them down. Classic Washburn. Had nothing to do with it, brought up. And then brought up another situation where a company is trying to do work with the government, and that company is also just happens to be conveniently about to be bought out by Mark Carney's company. Like, what are we doing here? Well, that is the level of corruption we're seeing, and why Parliament business was shut down, because of it's getting it's getting so it's been obviously it's been happening a long time, but it's getting to a stupid level of crazy. Like, okay, we can't keep allowing this to be ignored. Like, man, all this stuff is just making the weed charity look like nothing. It really is like it's look like a blip on the radar at this point. And it is funny that Mark Carney keeps figuring things around, trying to mess around. And it was brought up here in the chat already. I'm seeing it. He wants to touch our CPP dollars. He wants to manage the Canadian CPP. And the Conservatives came out today and talked about that.
I wrote a letter to Canada's lobbying commissioner after reviewing the situation of Justin Trudeau's appointment of his new de facto finance minister, Mark Carbon Tax Carney. Look, this is incredibly concerning when we've seen what happened in the hours after Justin Trudeau appointed Mr. Carney to this position. We saw that Mr. Carney's self-described good friend, the head of Telesat, received a $2+ billion loan. We've seen the announcement of discussions that Brookfield, Mark Carney's, the company that he's the chair of, now being able to enter into discussions with the federal government for a $50 billion pension scheme, so giving them access to more than 10 billion Canadian pension dollars. And we know that changes to mortgage rules with Brookfield owning Canada's largest private mortgage insurer is going to benefit that company, and that's reflected, of course, in the 6-month stock price high that was seen following that announcement. Now, we've asked the Liberals these questions. We've asked if this has been reviewed by the lobbying commissioner, and at the ethics committee, we've asked for Mr. Carney to appear at committee. And we'll be taking up that matter again today because the Liberals would not let it pass during previous discussions. And so perhaps today they will allow for some transparency to happen and for Mr. Carney to be called to testify at the Standing Committee on Access to Information, Privacy and Ethics. But for now, we're going to look to an independent officer of Parliament, Canada's Commissioner of Lobbying, to review these allegations and other that are outlined in my letter.
And that's where we're at. Conservative Party lobbying the lobbying commissioner. Please look into this. Does this impact any lobbying rules? Does this violate any lobbying rules that we have currently? They currently are looking to Mark Carney's company, looking to oversee 10 billion Canadian dollars under management. Man, makes me want to get into politics, if I'm being honest. All the work you can do as a politician to fund and funnel work to your private companies. Man, it's awesome. Seems like a great deal. Mark Carney's killing it. And Trudeau has been a master at it. Finding ways to get money to his buddies. Wild. Wild, wild times. And I think it's important to kind of see what's going on and important to see what's happening. And we're going to keep following the story as we go here. And I think it's good the Conservatives are putting the heat on and not falling for all the BS. And honestly, at this point, it is so serious. I'm very happy, at least I haven't seen it lately. I'm happy the Conservatives have not been engaging in culture war debates in the House. I think right now that's a waste of time. There's so many more serious things happening outside of the culture right now that we need to address. We talked about from top to bottom tonight. Chaos in our streets. People bringing ideologies here that are not compatible with Canadian values. Coalition confidence failing in the government. Parliamentary business being put on hold until slush fund documents make it back to the RCMP. Liberals accusing Conservatives of weaponizing the RCMP against them. It's a mess. And it stinks. And it's like, Josh, like, what the heck? What do we do? Like, where do we go from here? And there's not a whole lot we can do. But what we can do is maintain our humanity. Continue to treat our neighbors like we want to be treated. Continue to see them as human. Because the day will come, there will come a time when this will be over. And I still want to maintain my humanity through it all. It's dark right now. It's not fun. Especially if you're into politics and you're following this day by day. It's heavy on the head. Have you ever seen people in the chat being like, I've been looking at politics all day. I need to go to bed. And I don't blame you. I want to keep trying my best. Keep looking at the bright side. Keep being Josh Udall. Bringing you the news. Trying to bring a little bit of levity to it. and as well as just being a good person through it all, because the day will come, Trudeau will be out of power. He might win 20 seats in the next election. But then the next thing will be here. The Conservatives will be here, and we'll have to hold their feet to the fire as well to make sure we are not robbed blind yet again. So it was a dang good show, y'all. Very happy for everyone who has been talking in the comments. There's so much going on here. Y'all, it's popping. We're here for it. Really grateful for all of you. Stephen Dodd, every week it's one more thing. JT will likely prorogue Parliament. Yeah, possibly. May as well. I mean, I'm okay with that. Christian Freeland always sounds like she's on Family Feud. You brought that up too. Yeah. Good answer. Yeah, she does do that. The Carney corruption fits right in with the brand. You're not wrong. You're true. That's agreed. Don't expect the RCMP to do anything honest. Not expecting. My expectations are at an all-time low right now. You may as well be tripping on the bar at this point, because that's where that's at. Lots happening going on here. But we'll finish off with one last thing, because I need a little bit of levity to end. And, this is still political related, but Shane Gillis, comedian, talking about Trump, and it did crack me up.
Kambala. That was my favorite Trump quote. That was my favorite Trump quote recently.
What was it?
Kambala.
Oh, Kambala.
He's like, I called her Kambala. I was just joking around, but they're acting like I mispronounced it. We like that nickname, Kambala.
It is.
Anyway, the Comrade Harris is a disaster. He goes right back to his speech.
It is.
I love that his next line is, Comrade Harris is a disaster. Because whenever he gets sidetracked off the teleprompter.
Yeah.
Like he'll be reading a speech. He does that when he's reading.
He does it. He's just working out his shit.
And then he breaks from the teleprompter and talks shit.
Yeah.
And then it was funny that the teleprompter line seemed to be Comrade Harris. So he's like, Kambala. They thought I was saying it wrong when I said Kambala. I was not. Anyway, Comrade Harris is a complete disaster. Just right back to his speech.
And I really felt like that was spot on. Or watching it, and yeah, you can tell when Trump's on his teleprompter and when he's not. And sometimes it's funny to see what actually makes a teleprompter. It's kind of funny to watch, but that has been interesting too. The whole VP debate was an interesting situation happening down south. It was nice to see old politics make its comeback a little bit. There's some actually nice conversation and debate that actually were debating ideas and not going after each other's characters. I was there for it. I was happy to see it. As well, I may not have, me and Reg may have went to go see Am I Racist? Honestly, it was funnier than I thought it was going to be. I enjoyed it. Thought it was a good time. The final scene of him running his workshop for DEI had me howling. Having people whip themselves for being white. Oh, it cracked me up a lot. It was a good show. It was a grand old time. Well, I love you guys. Thank you so much for joining the show one more time. We'll see you in the newsletter on Friday. If not, I'll see you next Tuesday with Jennifer L. So whatever it is you're doing, whether you be hanging out with the kids, playing sports, or just living your life, whatever it is you're doing, wherever you are, I love you. I'm out. Peace.